Hello and welcome to another episode of Extra Time. So glad you could join us. I'm Adam Pellerin with my guy, Jahmai Webster, joining us from Fenway Park as the Red Sox continue their homestand with 5 against the Toronto Blue Jays. Jahmai, I was at Fenway over the weekend for the Diamondback series. Unfortunately, did not go very well for the Red Sox.
Yeah.
You were not, my friend, because you were doing what?
I was off one and celebrating 10-year anniversary, man. So that was pretty big, pretty massive for us. And then I was the rest of the day I spent it doing house chores, so getting back to normal life. And then
10-year anniversary,
beach
man.
day.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I went down to Marshfield beaches. Reminds me a lot of Cape Cod, so I was pleasantly surprised. And now I'm a Marshfield beach guy. So. There we go.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
10-year anniversary, man. Congratulations.
Thank you, man.
Tip of the cap to your lovely wife, because I don't know how she does it, man. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you're right. This reminds me of that one meme where the dude is like, his team was getting beat horribly at halftime, and he's at like post-game interview on the field. He's like, I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't think we were going to make it, but we did. Here we are. And that's how I feel about 10 years, man, because, marriage is certainly a journey, and, it has ups and downs, but it's so gratifying right now. We got 3 lovely children, so happy about where we are and the life that we're building.
I mean, not to talk too much about marriage and our jobs, but like it is a part of it, right? And it can be, truthfully, it can be difficult to navigate your personal relationships and your work-life balance. And obviously, the both of us travel. You travel a ton with the Red Sox. I travel with the Bruins. And, you try to make things, somewhat normal with that lifestyle. But at the end of the day, you're away a lot. Is that something that, because you didn't you haven't always been a sideline reporter. You started out as a local news guy like I did. And, this is sort of, within the last 8 years, I think, for you, 7 or 8 or whatever it is. And you guys have been together, years before that. So what was that adjustment like for you?
Man, it's been tough. Still making an adjustment in many aspects because, it's such a, shocking thing to the routine and the lifestyle that you build up because you spend so much time on the road and you're on the road in volume, right? Like you're on the road for 6.5, 7 months out of the year. So that part has been tough because, I'm from the West Coast. We're not from New England, so not much family support out here. So a lot of things fall on our shoulders, trying to make it that way, and then, build some type of community where you got a few people who you trust or who you can rely on for when you're in a pinch, you need some help with childcare, which we still have yet to really find. Not saying that we don't have it, but it's just it's very difficult. You live different places, it's just hard, right? So if an emergency came up, it'll probably fall on my shoulder. So it's hard, man. It's very difficult. Still trying to figure it out, but we've been making it work somehow, some way for the last 4+ years that I've been in this role, just doing baseball full time. So I feel like it's getting much more easier to manage because we've been kind of thrust into it for so long. Even though it's still very difficult. I don't want to downplay that because it's not easy being with 3 kids at home by yourself for extended periods of time. So she's a saint. She's a soldier. She's hanging in there. And, shout out to her because it's not until the off season really that I get faced with kind of a lot of these responsibilities. Because even when I am home, I'm leaving early afternoon, getting back home at night. So hopefully, it continues to pay off for us.
Yeah, man. I know. I hear you. I actually started traveling. I've been at Nessa for 12 years. We had our daughter in 2015. And, I was actually, funny story. I guess I'll share this since we're talking about family. I was actually down at spring training in 2015. And so my daughter was due in May, and I was down at spring training in February, just at the start of it. And I get a call saying, hey, you know what? I'm in labor. And I'm like, what? And my wife went right to the hospital, and I had to find a flight home as soon as I possibly could. And so
Wow.
I got the call on a Saturday, and it was the Saturday as February break was ending, here in Massachusetts. And so getting flights back from Florida, because a lot of people come down to Florida over February break, was not easy to do. And so I went to the airport. That on top of everything else, there was a weather situation. So
Just the perfect
so there was
storm.
flights, right, so to speak, right? Flights were being canceled, and people, were going to the airport in mass because they were flying home at the end of February break. But so I went to the airport at like 10 in the morning, and I was able to get a flight out at 8:00 at night. I was on standby, and I finally got a flight home. Ended up getting to the hospital down in Rhode Island, from Logan to Rhode Island, because we live in southeastern Mass. And then, as it turns out, she didn't deliver for another week. She was in the hospital for a week. But so that was kind of an adventure. But then, as time went on and I started going to spring training, it was I'd be gone for like a week or two. Remember, we'd go down in like week or two increments. And then I traveled a little bit with the team, the Red Sox as well. It's harder when the kids are younger, but as they get older, it gets a little bit easier. And I know you have, children like of all ages now. So you have little ones that need more attention. So that's when it's really challenging. But as they get older, it gets a little bit easier. Now that our daughter's 9 years old, if I'm traveling with the Bruins, she's going to be in school. She gets home from school, and my wife works from home. It ends up working out pretty well for us. So that's when I'll just say, man, you'll turn the corner once those kids start to get 8, 9, 10 years old. You'd be in good shape.
Yeah, I keep thinking that, but the more keep piling up, man. So got to stop having them, I guess, so we can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, man. So this latest trip for you was Baltimore and Houston, and that was
roadie.
a successful road trip, for the Red Sox. Splitting the series against the Orioles, winning the series over the Astros. There must have been some good vibes down there.
Yeah, I mean, nobody would have told you, but put them in a life or death situation, asked what they would have wanted from that road trip. They probably would have said, get one in Baltimore, and then hopefully take one in Houston as well. But to make it a winning road trip, win 4 out of the 7, it felt like there was life again, and being able to sustain their playoff push where they were in the wild card, but still haven't been able to figure out this Fenway Park part of the schedule, because half the games are played here at home, and you think it's advantageous for a squad who plays here 81 times, but it hasn't been that to this point. So coming off the road trip, vibes are good, vibes are high. You feel like you're getting healthy, you're getting some more arms back, you're getting a lot of the pieces to the puzzle that you had envisioned when you started on this journey. So it's still about 5 weeks left, man, 30 some odd games, and still potential to kind of, get to the position that you want to. I think the best part about last night was, that the teams in front of you still kind of stalled out as well. So you're still in a position here coming in, facing a Toronto team where you should be able to hopefully dominate and gain some of that ground back, because I think it was TC who told me several years ago, you don't want the weeks to outnumber the amount of games that you're back. Once that happens, you start to become in a bad spot. So 5-6 weeks left, 4.5 games back, pick up a game here shortly, and then, let the chips fall where they may.
There's a name for that, by the way. I'm sure you recall that there's a name for it. You might not remember what it's called or what TC called it. It's the Karen Playoff Viability Index, the CPVI. That's what he calls it. Yeah, we made a graphic and everything for it. So that will be something that we might be seeing on the screen from time to time as we hit the stretch run of the season. So Triston Casas returned during the
Gosh,
series against the Orioles.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. How could I forget
yeah,
that? One of
yeah.
my favorite guys on the team.
Yeah, man. So obviously, he hadn't played in 4 months. He missed 98 games. There's a lot of stuff in between talking about his timetable for a return.
Yeah,
Had it as early as late June, I think, at one point, and then it was
yeah.
right after the All-Star break, and then there were other dates mixed in, and then it was him talking about, oh yeah, I've been taking swings, but the truth of the matter was he was actually just visualizing swings and
Yeah.
not actually swinging the bat. So there's been a lot of that. And of course, he's a unique character. He's a guy that's on the field doing yoga, shirtless, like all that stuff. But we'll start with this, Jahmai. Having him back around the team and in the lineup, how did the vibe change? Did it change, or just your take on what it was like to have Triston Casas back with the Red Sox?
I mean, from my perspective, it was a injection of life and energy, just because of the type of person he is, the personality that he is, the great conversations that you have with him about hitting or life. I mean, anything really. So I felt like it was a shot in the arm in that regard. And then, he played in 11 minor league games, right? And as you mentioned, like the first initial timeline, I think that we talked to him about was June 26th or around there. Absolutely feeling positive about, his return at that time and thinking that that was going to be a viable option because this injury, I mean, this happened in April. We were in Pittsburgh at the time. So you mentioned it, almost 100 games missed before he finally made his way back. But it was against Toronto, surprisingly enough, who the Red Sox are prepared to host for a 5-game series that he was expecting to come back in June. That didn't happen. Started to get pushed back even more than that. But finally having him back has been great. The offense, seemingly, I guess when you can hit, you can hit. It's like Chris Sale used to tell us, I should be able to get out of bed and throw strikes. So it's like if you're a hitter, you can do that. And, the muscle memory kicks in. And if that's, one of those skills that you have that are elite, I don't think you needed that much minor league games to get that back. But for him, he said it was all about finding the ability to do that pain free. And to this point, it's going to be something that you manage as far as the pain tolerance and the discomfort, so to speak. But as he talked about, everybody is kind of feeling something at this point. So as long as it's not going to hinder me or hurt me, and it's going to improve eventually, then if I can do that and swing and have my elite bat speed, then I want it to be in there. That's what he said when he returned back for that second game in Baltimore. So he's been great. He's been great picking up where he's left off, and he lengthens this lineup, and he gives him that pop. Already a lineup that its calling card is being able to score runs. That's been kind of a seesaw over the last couple of weeks, but it's good to have him back. He's a great personality, and I'm happy that he's here, at least for the stretch run as we see kind of where this team takes us.
I want to talk about the personality a little bit more because he's such an interesting character. And by the way, I love that about him because I feel there are times where, athletes are so guarded against the media that they're afraid of sort of stepping out of bounds and they just want to play it straight most of the time. Triston Casas, and I'm not like wild or anything like that, but there's not a lot of guys out there that would have the guts to go out and sunbathe or do yoga or, say some of the things that he said, but it's just who he is, and he's not afraid to show that. I love that about him. That's such confidence in who he is. But what's he like just interacting with day to day, like outside of the interviews? I don't know how many interactions you've had with him. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm just kind of curious because he's such an interesting guy.
Yeah, no, quite a bit, actually. I mean, I try to talk to him just about every day, really, because he's that interesting and he's going to say something that may surprise you or just maybe a regular day, but he's very hard to lock down. You never know what you're going to get when you have conversations with Triston. That's something I quickly realized when we first had a conversation. But he'll say something that can surprise you, or he'll say something that's really insightful that'll make you think a lot. So I think that's one of his greatest qualities is actually he listens and he answers your questions in a way that, really gets down to an explanation. It's not just surface level or coach speak, how we, talk about that we hear a lot with a lot of the athletes, because as you talked about, they want to be guarded. They want to say things that are protecting their image and who they are. But, I like his conviction. He sticks to what he says and he speaks what's on his mind. And, you know, I'm sure some people it might rub the wrong way, but I certainly can appreciate it as a member of this baseball traveling party. So he's one of the most interesting characters on the team.
Yeah, how do you think he's received by his teammates now? I think maybe initially, for a young player to sort of do what he was doing and draw attention to himself, I don't know if that's necessarily received well by veterans who are in the clubhouse. But I think over time, obviously you have to produce, and he's done that as well. So that certainly helps the cause. But, I heard Kenley Jansen talking about Triston on MLB Network because they had asked him about having Triston Casas around and being such a unique character. And it sounded like Kenley embraced him for who he is. Do you feel like that most of the guys in that room are embracing, who Triston Casas is rather than looking at him as sort of a distraction?
Yeah, 100%, because like he's so comfortable in his own skin, like he's not going to change. So, I don't think they should try to change him, but I don't think that he's had to make some adjustments to, the sunbathing and some of those things that are a little bit outside the box as it relates to getting prepared for a major league game on a nightly basis. But they've allowed him to be who he is and maintain his personality and his quirks and the things that make him interesting and make him him. So I think at first it was a little shocking because of all the sports, I think baseball is pretty vanilla as it relates to personality. They're starting to open up that box a little bit more and, have players weekend and things of that nature to kind of highlight who these people are, not just numbers or statistics or names you see in a box score, but actual individuals. So he's been able to do that the moment he walked into the clubhouse, and even as a prospect coming up, he's maintained that. So, it's hard to be somebody else, but it's easy to just be yourself. You know what I mean? Like that's what comes most natural. So I think that's advice for everybody. Just kind of stay authentic to who you are. But I think they've embraced him for who he is because of not only the production, but because of how interesting and, fun and unique he is as an individual. That's one thing. It's like, he's a hard worker. He takes his craft very serious, and he approaches the game on a nightly basis where he goes out there to try to be the best. I mean, crazy as it might sound, but he told me one time that, he wants to be the best left-handed hitter that the Red Sox have ever had. And obviously that's a tall task when you think about Ted Williams holding that seat. Yeah. But I mean, that's the type of aspiration that he has for himself. It sounds crazy, but he has belief. He believes in his art, his craft. He believes in the work that he puts in, and he believes in himself. So who's to say that when it's all said and done that he may not accomplish some of these things that appear to be lofty goals for a player who's in his second, third year as a professional?
Couple left-handed hitters in Red Sox history that are pretty good too.
Yeah.
But that's cool. I like that. I mean, shoot for the stars, right?
Right.
But, we were talking about, athletes being a little bit guarded and, Triston Casas speaking his mind, being who he is. It's not that, and I'd be interested to get your perspective on this too. I feel like nowadays with social media, athletes are more willing to show their personalities through social media, and sometimes they hold back with the conventional media, right? And it's like, I've talked to athletes that have been like, they give sort of the cookie cutter response, and it's fine. You satisfy your obligation and you speak with the media. But then, like, I'll see a social media post and be like, wow, where's that personality, like, during the interview process? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like nowadays, like, you see a lot of these athletes who don't say much in front of the camera or to reporters, but they're willing to sort of, put themselves out there a little bit more on social media. And I'm not sure if they feel more comfortable on that platform or if it's because they want to sort of keep their social media as a place to express themselves and it's their account versus like talking to us or members of the media. What's your take on that?
I mean, it's an interesting thing for sure. I think there's some more brand awareness for what people are putting out there. And, I think players want to build their following as it relates to that. It was with the advent of social media, it's an ability for them to have conversations with the fans directly as well. So usually, and still in many aspects, their voice is through members of the press, and that's how they get things that they want out there, and that's how they speak to the fans. And there's still a faction of people who kind of hear from these players through that lens. But a lot of people, some of the older ones especially, aren't on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, and maybe Facebook is probably more in line with some of the old,
AOL
exactly. But a lot of these people aren't there, so having that ability to talk to them directly and then also put out there what you want is great for some people, and it works for endorsements and advertisements, and there's money to be made out there. So trying to capitalize on that market is important to a lot of players. So we see that. Where, they're not like this with us, you know what I mean, so to speak, but you can kind of see more of their personality along their social media activity.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think you're 100% right where, we're still a vehicle for players to get their message across to fans. And, I think that's still a very, it's no question still exists. But I've just noticed that with some professional athletes, maybe holding it back a little bit and saving it for their own social media. What's your favorite Triston Casas moment? I have one in mind, and maybe I'd actually like to ask you about it just to refresh the memories of some fans out there. So it's got to be the home run, man, down in Tampa with the fan that you interviewed.
Oh man, that's right. That was a good one. That's probably in my top three for sure of Triston Casas moments. It's probably number two.
So his first career home run, right? At the Trop.
Yeah.
Right.
At the Trop in Tampa.
And it's caught. Yeah, I'll just set it up. It's caught by a fan. And
who was in disguise.
Who's in disguise.
He was
right.
He was undercover as a White Sox fan. He had the White Sox jersey underneath his Tampa Bay Rays jersey, but he had just been there at the Trop, or I think he just moved to St. Petersburg, so he was there for the game. And he's like, I'm actually a White Sox fan, and he didn't really understand what he had just done by getting this ball. He just come back from getting a hot dog or something, and the ball literally bounced and landed right in his hands, essentially. So I forget his name; it's slipping me, but maybe I'll find it before we finish with this.
The dude looked just like Ryan Brazier. He was like Ryan Brazier's twin. I was like, how did Ryan Brazier get up into the stands and out of the bullpen? It was really unbelievable. But that dude was a character. Like he had. What did he want? Didn't he want like something ridiculous for the ball or something?
He was guarding it for sure. But the thing was, come to find out, like he was getting a lot of bad press from this, and we basically doxed him, right? Like people started to look him up and figure out who he was, and it was tough because after that, because I did the initial interview, and it was like, well, what do you want? Because he had the ball. He's like, well, they just came and talked to me, the security, and I'm trying to, barter and negotiate for some things, and maybe a bat, couple sign balls, whatever the case may be. He was asking for a lot. Mind you, this is his first career home run. This is Triston Casas. This is not, 500 for, Barry Bonds or anything like that, right? So it was like, you got to understand the situation, be able to read the room a little bit. And he was just playing a little bit more hard-nosed than he probably should have. So in our initial conversation, he didn't give the ball back, not yet at least. So that kind of went, you know, a little bit crazy with some of the social media response. People felt like uh, he shouldn't have been so entitled to that ball because it should go to the person who hit it. Like it's more special to them than it was to the fan. That was what a lot of the conversation centered around. Um, so then after I remember I did the interview, then Rob Bradford came over there, interviewed him and some other people. So he got more information and he was like, this was, basically like, I think I was misunderstood. I'm not trying to keep this ball, but I want him to have it. I just wanted to make sure that I understood, the parameters around getting a souvenir like this and what, should be my return. So he had never been in the situation before. So he wanted to be more aware of kind of what people got in return. But
Oh man,
overall, a
that was
nice
so
guy,
funny.
essentially. But yeah, just kind of crazy situation because of his doppelganger status with Ryan Brazier, and then the fact that he was not even a Rays fan, and he even in the interview he opened up his shirt like that, and he had the White Sox jersey. So people were like, "Who is this guy? Like, get him out of here!" He certainly wasn't making many friends for a lot of the people who were watching and wanted Costas to have that home run ball.
No, people were all over social media, all over him on social media. I remember that a couple years ago where he was just getting killed. It
Yeah.
was just, I kind of felt badly for the guy, but yeah, it was just, that was kind of a funny situation with Triston Casas sort of involving him more indirectly than actually something he did outside of hitting the home run. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah. Lengthy negotiation. I do remember, and I remember it distinctively. Will Middlebrooks was on the call there, and he was crushing this guy because I come back from my report and even the interview. So it didn't do him any favors because he was getting absolutely blasted. Like, dude, are you kidding me? I can't believe you're holding on to this ball. Like, give it up to the kid.
oh man, there's been situations where like fans get crushed. Like we've
Yeah.
talked
Oh
about like,
man.
oh, this guy won't give the ball
Yeah.
to that kid, and we just
And you
keep
know
the
what?
camera on him. We keep going, and we're talking about it. It's
Yeah.
like,
And you mentioned actually that brings something else back to my mind because when Masataka Yoshida hit his first home run ball, same thing happened. It was his first home run ball in the big leagues or at Fenway, one or the other. It was a special home run
yeah,
ball. So it landed with this family, and this kid got it.
yeah,
And
that's right.
the gentleman was like from New Jersey or something. So like they were really playing hardball with Red Sox security and some of the people who go to retrieve these things. So I went up there and I was like, "Hey man, can we grab you real quick?" He's like, "Sure." He was like, yeah, like his excuse was, and I shouldn't say excuse. His reasoning was, "It's my son's first game. He got a home run ball. Like this is going to be a memory that he keeps forever. It's not going to be something that we give away or we try to sell. And it's Moss's first home run, so who knows what it'll be as far as value later in life. But also, like I think their thought process and the reasoning was behind it was, dude, you can not only get a signed bat, you can get another baseball, you can get all these things if you just return this first back for him. And I don't think it was a situation where it was lost in translation. The guy didn't seem to understand. So people were absolutely crushing him, looking up the kid and saying the kid's spoiled. This is a bad example. And I was like, geez, man. So sometimes our TV kind of
Yeah,
it works negatively when it comes to those things
yeah.
because people have opinions and they want things to happen for the players obviously and getting those things back.
But in our defense, it's part of the story of the game, right? So you
Hmm.
got to tell the story of the game, and if that's a part of the story, I mean, you got to talk about it. It's right there in front.
Yeah.
Ignoring that would be a disservice, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't go in there with negative intentions. Obviously, when I go up to interview these people, like I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know how they're going to be or if they're going to give up these baseballs. But I think if you talk about not giving a baseball back and telling us because your son, this is his first home run ball, people kind of weigh, the importance of that and be like, dude, you can just give it back and give something else. So he was not well liked, and we continued to show him. And I even came back and I was like, well, it looks like he's going to hold on to it. It's a tough negotiation. And people were
Yeah,
absolutely
that's right.
obliterating this guy too. So I
Oh
was like,
man.
I forget who was in the booth. It might have been Uke too at the time. And he's like, what? He's not giving the ball back? So it makes it worse when our guys chime in and they start questioning, some of what the fans are doing.
Oh man, I think it's so funny. Like if you had if at some point you built up a reputation of being the gotcha like sideline reporter. And if they see you coming, it's like they run away. You know, it's just like Jahmai Webster, Nesson. Why aren't you giving that baseball back to Masataka Yoshida? Red Sox Nation wants answers now.
I mean, honestly, that's what it feels like sometimes because people hate to see that sort of stuff. But it's like I can understand both perspectives, but man, it's a tough look if you don't give that up. That's for sure.
Hey, I want to change gears a little bit, and I think this is worth talking about too, just for a couple minutes anyway. Danny Jansen's going to make Major League history. And, you know, by the time people listen to this podcast, it will have already happened. But I just want to get your vibe around that. So just to set up real quick, Red Sox game from June 26th, suspended because of rain. Danny Jansen was playing for the Blue Jays at the time. He was at the plate batting for the Blue Jays. 0-1 count. Rains come down. Games get suspended. It's rescheduled to Monday. It's part of a day-night doubleheader. In that time in between, Danny Jansen's traded to the Red Sox, and Reese McGuire, who was catching for the Red Sox on June 26th, was DFA'd, eventually sent down to Worcester, and so Danny Jansen is catching the same game where he was at the plate for the Blue Jays. So he'll be the first player in MLB history to play for two teams in one game. So is there a lot of buzz surrounding that today?
Yeah. I mean, it's been buzz for the last probably 3 weeks or so, maybe even more. I think the most insightful thing to come out of today's conversation, actually talking to Danny Jansen, was Rob Bradford, Baseball Isn't Boring podcast. He had probably one of the most funniest questions. He asked Jansen, like, how would you scout yourself? And he was like, what do you mean? You know, he's like, yeah, if you're catching and you're batting, how would you scout yourself? He didn't really have an answer, or he certainly didn't want to give any insight to the opposition. I'm sure they have a lot of information on him, but then I also asked him, he said he's been getting hit up by a lot of people. And even Red Sox manager Alex Cora today talked about him getting texts from Buster Olney and a couple of the national baseball writers talking about the history that's going to be made. So Jansen says he's gotten a lot of the same texts from friends, family, players around the league, like history. And, you know, this is going to be pretty cool for you. And I think the Hall of Fame even reached out at some point. They won a few items from this. So he's going into the Hall, man, after this. So that'll be pretty
crazy,
cool.
Right?
It's been a lot of buzz surrounding this because considering what the game was and the fact that, I mean, how long has this game been around, right? You think about the history of baseball and the fact that this is the first time this has happened is pretty crazy. And it would take a unique situation like this, a suspended game being picked up after the trade deadline where said player gets traded to the opposition and he's playing in both games or in both box scores, which is nuts.
Yeah, that makes baseball so great, right? It's, you know, you've been around the game for a long time. Even got, you know, did the pre and post game shows this past weekend with Jim Rice and Jonathan Papelbon, and, you know, they've been around the game a long time. Nobody's ever seen this before. It's wild that, you know, to your point, games have been around this long. We haven't seen this happen before. I mean, we've seen guys like switch dugouts, you know, during a series after being traded from one team to the other. That happened with Stephen Drew, famously, between the Red Sox and Yankees.
Happened with Christian Vasquez as well a couple years ago.
Christian Vasquez in Houston, right? Yeah, so that happens, but something like this is pretty wild. I gotta mention this too. My guy Pat, I love him to death. So I don't know if you heard about this at all, but during the pregame show, I'm explaining this Danny Jansen situation. I'm saying, yeah, going to make history playing for both teams. Pap was under the impression that Jansen was going to hit for the Blue Jays and then rejoin the Red Sox. And I had said, no. Switch jerseys. And I said, no, because he had said, I started explaining this. He said, well, if you're Danny Jansen, don't you just strike out on purpose? And I'm thinking, strike out on purpose? I'm like, no. I'm like, he's not hitting. He's going to be catching. Yeah, but I don't understand. Like, why wouldn't you just want to help your current team? And I said, well, wait a minute. He's staying on the Red Sox for this game. Right. He's going to be catching. They're pinch hitting for his spot in the lineup. He's not going to go to the Blue Jays dugout put on the Blue Jays jersey, get up to the plate, swing and miss, and then return to the Red Sox dugout and put on his Red Sox. That's not how that works. And so I explained that hilariously to Pap on the pregame show. But I mean, again, in his defense, this has never happened before, right? So it's like he wasn't quite sure of the what was happening. So it's because it's unprecedented. It's never happened, but that was pretty funny. The idea of a guy like suiting up, for the Red Sox, warming up, and then go, all right, I got to go into the Blue Jays dugout now. Get on the Blue Jays game.
I mean, that would be something because he's also catching. He's starting in this game. So, I remember back in wiffle ball in the backyard, like, you swing at a strike or you catch a ball and you throw it back to the pitcher. It'd be that situation. But it'd be interesting if that were the case. Right. But certainly not. Certainly not. He is suiting up for the Red Sox and the Red Sox only for this game. Yeah, he is. And also, the other part of it that's kind of interesting is that had it been an 0-2 count, and the strikeout, if the pinch hitter struck out, it would have been charged to Jansen, and he would have been catching his own strikeout, which would have been kind of wild too. So another like quirky rule with baseball. Yeah. So Jahmai, I haven't seen you in a while. I got to tell you, last week I was reunited with the lovely Sophia Jurkjevich. Oh my gosh! Really?
Extra time. Yep. Which was great. It was great to catch up with her. Got me thinking about hockey season, which is like right around the corner, less than 4 weeks away from the preseason opener, which is wild. But I had to get her up to speed on a couple of things, and that included the life and times of Jahmai Webster. And part of our conversation. Yes, interesting, some might say, and controversial, some might say as well, pertaining to a pickleball injury. So the pickleball injury is something that she was not aware of. And if you recall, this is sort of par for the course with Soph in terms of your past injuries, because when we had talked on an earlier edition of Extra Time, she was unaware that Rafael Devers hit a 110 mile per hour foul ball into your ribs, and she didn't know that. So no surprise that she wasn't up to speed on your ankle injury. So that's sort of a roundabout way of getting to the question of how is your ankle?
I think before we get to that, and thank you for asking, Adam, but before we get to that, this is a bigger issue as it relates to Sophia and her involvement in our lives and knowing what's going on and the way she approaches our friendship. I think it's more of an attack on her character because she should know these things when they impact your life so hugely, if that's a real word, so big, so bigly.
No, hugely is a word. You're good.
Yeah, right. But I think that when you talk about all these things, about her being uninformed about this, that, and the other, I think it hurts my heart more than anything. So we have the injury update on my heart next. But as far as the ankle, I'm about 90% now. Pickleball is certainly one of those sports that is, I think it's the highest injury rate for emergency room visits to this point in our country. So it's treacherous. It's not for the faint of heart. I can tell you that right now as somebody who has tried to dominate this sport like no other. And it's one of those things where
we're not paying you for the appearance, Rob. All right? You're not the clubhouse insider. Man. We're not paying you for that, back up. Okay?
I was just talking about you, actually. So, it's funny because Rob Bradford just passed by, and he got pretty beat up on the streets of Colorado. And he was making fun of my pickleball injury. But he understands, this beat is treacherous. You may be tough at times, but I'm doing much better. I'm doing much better, man. And hopefully to stay injury free the last 5 weeks of the season, get me to the postseason, and hopefully, dominate there as well.
Rob's injury, did that come before or after your pickleball injury?
Rob's injury came after my pickleball injury, and it's ironic because he was making fun of my pickleball injury, and then karma was like slap in the face, man.
Yeah, well, that's what I
So
was gonna say. That's a little bit
yeah,
of
yeah,
karma coming back. I mean, I don't
yeah.
like to see anybody get hurt, but I mean, if you're
Yeah, I
gonna
don't like
talk
to
that
see anybody
smack,
get hurt. And Rob is a dear friend, but
yeah,
sometimes
of
he
course,
writes
but
checks that his mouth can't cash.
yeah, no, I would agree. Now, you had said that pickleball has the highest number of injury rates. I don't know where you get your statistics from, but I will say that comes as no surprise. That comes as no surprise because I
Hey,
feel
we
like
can
there's a
Google it right
lot of
now.
people. I know. I actually believe that because there are a lot of people getting out there on the pickleball court that are caught up, swept up in the phenomenon, but they are not physically equipped to handle the quick
Right.
movements, because I don't think a lot
Exactly.
of people realize that there are quick movements, and the people that are taking the
Explosive.
pickleball
Some might
court,
say explosive.
some might say explosive movements. Those are some movements that some of these folks haven't made in many, many years. And I'm not saying that's the case with you, but I'm saying that could be the case with a lot of people who are suffering these pickleball injuries, is that they get out on the court and they're moving laterally for the first time as if they're like, in their 20s, and they are not in their 20s. So some of these injuries are
Yeah,
popping up.
certainly a quick reminder for where you are at in life. You can be humbled quickly on the pickleball court, but keep at it though, and just have an opportunity. If you get an opportunity to go out there and play, very fun game, high level cardiovascular workout, and just take it, at your pace. Maybe slow down a hair, but as I said on the broadcast that night, I only know how to play at one speed, man, 100%. And that's how I went. My game is like Jaron Duran's of pickleball. You know what I mean? I'm going all out every single play.
Yeah, I feel like you might have to look into load management moving forward, just because, again, the years are starting to creep up. It's not the same Jahmai Webster that was
Yeah.
as youthful as he used to be. So you just got to keep
Yeah,
that in
man.
mind. I want you to stay upright. I want you to stay healthy. I don't want any more dugout pics of you laid up with an ice bag and, hurting. I want you to continue to be a healthy sideline reporter for Nesson.
Yeah. Yeah. Most important. I mean, I'm reminded every day that I look in the mirror that I'm not the man I once was.
Yeah. You and me both, buddy. You and me both.
Yeah, that's for sure,
Oh,
man.
man.
But I, see what I can do. See what I can do. But I try to pick up where I
So
left
you're
off.
playing
And,
again, right? You're playing
yeah.
again.
So
You're going to play again.
actually,
Okay.
I was hoping. Well, we just played actually on this last road trip in Houston, and I was hoping to document
Oh,
that and
wow.
bring it. I was hoping to do that as a segment. But once we
Wow.
got there, and I began to gather some clips, the coaches and several of the other players, their game began to drop a certain, level below average. So because of that fact,
Yeah.
they just wanted to stop the cameras and just leave it as fun time. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to bring that to the people, to the masses, but maybe one day, who knows, they'll be more acceptable to bring that in, because I think it's a very fun aspect for something that they do collectively off the field. But we'll see. It's just tough.
Are you talking
Everybody's
about,
not
like,
used to the red lights. When the camera comes on,
yeah.
man, games fold.
Oh,
That's
so you're
exactly what I'm
saying
talking
that, like, once the lights came on, guys weren't
Yes.
playing well, and they didn't
No.
want
And
it
they
put out there that they
yeah,
weren't playing?
exactly.
Wow. How about
Exactly.
that?
I don't want
That's
to. I don't want to
super
name any
interesting.
names. I don't want to name any
Right.
names,
Right.
but I will
Yeah.
say, there are a couple coaches on the major league staff, and
Ooh. Okay. All right. All right.
both sides of the
We'll
ball.
get.
Both sides of the
Yeah, that's
ball.
interesting. That's interesting. All right.
And,
Good. Well, that will be
yeah.
that we'll
I
have to
mean,
follow up on that.
to their credit, and part of it too, I've been building this goodwill, but part of it is just they just want it to be, their moment away from the field, which I can understand. But
All right.
but
Fair
I thought
enough.
they'd be okay with it, because they've been giving me such a hard time, about my pickleball game, and even though it's grown leaps and bounds, I just want to
Yeah.
let the people know where I'm at now, considering that tough injury that I suffered. But they weren't too
All right,
interested in
man.
that. So
Well,
another story for
I'll
a
have to
different day,
follow.
maybe.
Different extra time, no doubt about that. I'm glad to see that you were upright and playing pickleball once again, and glad to see you back on the sideline. Always good to see you in person. Not as much these days, but on Extra Time gives us an opportunity to catch up, which I really enjoy. And hopefully Sophia can join us at one point. You can catch Extra Time on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. You can watch us there, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. So for Jahmai Webster, I'm Adam Pellerin. Until the next time.